Hi guys, welcome to week 10. This week the topic is tourism, which may seem like kind of a silly topic for a class, but if you think about it, a lot of intercultural communication takes place through tourism, and for a lot of people that aren't having a lot of intercultural interactions, tourism is probably the number one place that they are encountering people. So, um, tourism is a huge industry. And so, especially in countries and cultures that might be poverty stricken, this is a big money maker. In general, tourism is a good thing. Ecotourism can take people to special places to go see conservation. Heritage tours can let people see cultural roots. But there also can be these power differences within tourism that can make them kind of negative. So, tourists are people that go and visit another region. And why do people go travel? Well, maybe they're motivated from an interest in history or culture, or maybe they're just looking for status. And people come from a variety of backgrounds, and then they are served by people who are hosts. They're residents of the tourist region who have varying attitudes towards tourists themselves. Um, so, host can react to tourists in a lot of different ways. One way can be retreatism, that can be just avoiding conflicts or contact with tourists altogether. Um, and especially if people feel like their country or their city is being invaded by tourists. Tourists might not be aware that those hosts aren't even there. Also, people that are in host countries can resist tourists. Passive resistance can be just grumbling or just saying nasty things about the tourist, whereas assertive resistance might actually be making fun of tourists or pretending not to speak a language or not helping people. But boundary maintenance is a way to regulate the interaction between these two groups. And so this can be just living in a completely different area from where tourism is and just physically removing yourself. But economic revitalization of communities has occurred because of tourism, and as you saw in the film on Jamaica this week, that these places need tourists really to survive, and so people have to kind of just deal with that. Um, so a lot of the interactions between host country people and tourists are kind of limited. They're transitory. And they might just be simple business exchanges. We saw some examples of that in the videos. Tourists can often are at a different level of socioeconomic status and privilege than the people that they're interacting with, and so that colors the interaction as well. Um, so, in general, some of the challenges associated with tourism are searching for authenticity, that people want to see potentially the real culture. Um, and sometimes there's stage authenticity, like they have these exotic dance shows. For example, I don't know if any of you guys have been to Hawaii, but they have these luau's where they do these performances, which may or may not actually be the true tribal dances. People are just performing them for this stage authenticity. Um, there also can be cultural norms about how people interact in public. So, for example, um, in the US, there's not a lot of interaction between strangers on the streets, but maybe in other cultures, there's a lot of smiling. Um, and also things like touching the merchandise or bargaining. In America, we don't bargain very often, but in other cultures, people do a lot of bargaining. Also, being in new cultural contexts can lead to culture shock. We talked about that a couple weeks ago, but people can be really in shock about the differences that they encounter. Also, people are dealing with a time difference, different food, a different climate. So people are already a little off kilter when they're traveling. Um, and sometimes when people experience culture shock, they'll take it out on the local community, which is really unfortunate. Also, we have language issues. In the US, there's not a great emphasis on learning foreign languages, and so when people are going visiting countries that don't speak English, if they're from the US and speak English, there's going to be barriers there. Um, so overall, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope it was interesting for you, that you can kind of think a little bit more about the impact that tourism can have. Otherwise, I hope the assignments go well, and we'll see you next week.